Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this new edition of 1 Hour with Europe. Today, AI in focus, and especially one very interesting initiative that the Commission have launched just 1 month ago in Copenhagen, which is the RISE initiative that is part of the European Strategy for AI in Science and under the Apply AI strategies that, if you remember, they have been launched in October this year. We are in an evolving moment. AI is a growing asset for the world. So it's important that, of course, Europe follows it carefully. My name is Massimo Busuoli. I am the director of the New Brussels office. And today we are hosting with us, and we are very happy to have you with us, Lars De Nul, which is Deputy Head of Unit of AI in Science and Critical Technology Unit in DG RTD of the European Commission. Before giving the word to Lars and basically get the first insights about what RAISE is expected to do and which kind of opportunities we can have to contribute and to benefit from the funding that is coming out of the European pocket, if I may say, I would like just to remind you that you will have the possibility to challenge our guest with your questions at the end of the presentation. Do not write your questions because I'm not going to read them, but just write your name in the Q&A part of the Zoom link to reserve the right to be called. And when you will be called, please be ready to open your microphone and camera, present yourself, and just ask your question. So, Nul, welcome. As a university, we are very interested in some of the aspects, not only the scientific and technological ones, but also the one related to skills and excellence. I'm very curious to hear what you're going to say, and I already have prepared some personal questions to you, but I'm sure that our participants will also be very active.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Many thanks for inviting me here, and very happy to explain to you and your audience a bit what we are doing at the Commission with our strategy on AI in science, and in particularly also on RAISE. So we have issued our strategy for artificial intelligence in science early October this year, so very recently. And this was followed up by an AI summit, which we organized with the Danish presidency in Copenhagen at the start of November. So there's quite a lot happening in the space, and I would like to talk you a little bit through what we have in our strategy, how we have approached it, and how then RAISE is being paved the way by this strategy. Our Commissioner Zarieva, has also a very strong vision for AI in science and the importance that this has for the European ecosystem and European competitiveness ultimately as a goal. So she is quoted saying, strategy for AI in science will unlock major opportunities for the scientific community, but then also for startups and SMEs, eventually driving competitiveness and accelerating the path from lab to market. Our goals with the AI in science strategy are broadly to empower European researchers with AI. We want to make sure that European researchers reap all the benefits that there are to be had with AI. And that manifests itself in a multitude of areas, aspects of the scientific ecosystem. Researchers can facilitate their scientific work in all sorts of ways with more general purpose AI or with more specialized and dedicated AI tools. Ultimately, there is a goal of accelerating scientific discovery, and there's already some evidence that this is happening in some disciplines already now, and we want to make sure that we are prepared for that and we can be on that train in Europe. And there are also opportunities to amplify the impact of science. As I mentioned, ultimately, the goal would be that if we can accelerate scientific discovery and mobilize better the scientific ecosystem in Europe with AI, this will lead to scientific breakthroughs, will lead to discovery of new technologies that in the end will serve European competitiveness and could also address societal challenges. We started our journey not so long ago in the European Commission in DG Research and Innovation, focusing on AI in science. And we did an analysis at the time. The data here is already a little bit outdated. And we're actually at the moment producing a follow-up for this. But you could very clearly see that already from 2016, 2017, China started overtaking the US and the EU, which were a bit on par in terms of publications on AI in science, scientific publications. That trend has continued up until to the last data point in 2021, which we had when we did this study in 2023. And a projection was also made to today, and you can see it there on the right. We have strong reasons to believe that the Chinese advantage there would be even greater today than we had originally projected. So this is also part of a geopolitical consideration where we see that both China and the US are investing heavily in AI in general and in AI in science also in particular. And we want to make sure that Europe, in its own way, with its own European approach, strategically positions itself correctly to be able to be part of that race in a way and ensure our competitiveness in science and guard our scientific excellence, which as Europe, of course, we very much have at the moment, and we want to keep it. We have a number of challenges, and global competition is one of them, as I already mentioned. The very fast technological developments are also an issue, with the technology developing so fast that it's difficult, even for academics, investors, and I would also say policymakers, to really stay on top and to be able to assess what is exactly happening in the field and what the possibilities are that these new technologies bring. Third major obstacle is the traditional fragmentation across Europe. We're very strong in Europe if we combine our forces, but often we are fragmented, which means that we don't reach maximal efficiency in terms of scientific research. And what we want to do is fight fragmentation in a way by encouraging collaboration, because we can stand stronger together. We have a distinctive European approach that is very different from the approach taken in China, obviously, but also I would say from the US, and increasingly so. Our approach since several years is anchored in trustworthy AI. So that is AI that you can trust, AI that gives you reliable results, AI that also can be explained. You can understand how the AI reaches certain conclusions, or when it fails, you should also be able to understand that it fails and why it fails. We have in Europe top-notch research facilities. We really have a lot of excellence also in AI, and we've had that since decades. Europe has always been a strong pusher in the AI domain. And we want to build on those. We do not want to replace them in any way. We want to build on those and facilitate their work and create incentives for them to operate even better and collaborate better. That, of course, is very closely linked with scientific excellence. We have great scientific excellence across domains and in AI in Europe, to the extent that many of the well-known names in AI research from the US have had at one point training in Europe. So we really have this excellent base there. And there, of course, the challenge would be to make sure that we can also keep that talent and then create further talent by supporting researchers who want to get into AI and science in their discipline. And then fourthly, we have scientific freedom and diversity. We are a very diverse continent. We are a very diverse union, and we think that is a strength. We also think that scientific freedom and openness is a strength, because in collaboration, you can get to results quicker and find solutions quicker. Slide, please. The journey that we have made within Directorate-General for Research and Innovation of the Commission is a bit detailed here. I'll highlight some of the points. So we did a number of working papers and analytical work with a policy brief we had in 2023 or early 2024. And we had then, meanwhile, an opinion of the scientific advice mechanism. This is a group of experts within DG Research and Innovation that did a study of sorts, an advice on AI in science. And that opinion was very relevant for our further work on the strategy, because it identified a number of objectives and a number of considerations that we really wanted to take on board going forward. We also issued guidelines on the responsible use of generative AI in research. So that is more restricted, that is specifically on generative AI, and it's about the use of those generative AI tools. There was a strongly emerging need for such guidelines. I think that still persists or has even become stronger. And we saw at the time a fragmentation of guidelines being issued in various research institutes, maybe member states that would wanted to come up with guidelines, because researchers were asking for guidance on how do we use these tools. When can we use a general purpose tool like ChatGPT, for example? When can we use it? When is it good? When should we be careful with it? And together with member states in the context of ERA, the European Research Area, we established those guidelines. They're quite high level, they're quite general purpose, but they're very much appreciated and they form a basis also for further local development. They are a living document, which means that they are updated now and again. We had an update this year, and we will also be coming with an update next year. Just to highlight an aspect of that, it's necessary to update them because the technology is evolving fast, but also because the use is evolving fast. For example, we see that there is a lot of grants that are being requested, and it's quite obvious that AI is being used in drafting the proposals. Question is, how do you deal with that? In the evaluation, we say at the moment we recommend not using any artificial intelligence, but that of course creates an imbalance. So questions like that are very important. We ask them in a general forum and we try to reach a consensus for issuing those. So that's an important aspect of the work we're doing. We then had council conclusions on AI in science under the Polish presidency, really member states urging us to for more action on that, really wanting to advance and develop common action on AI in science. We had a mutual learning exercise with a number of member states on national policies where we're looking, okay, what is each member state doing in terms of AI in science policy? What are some best practices there? What can be shared? All of this also in an effort to see where can we find alignment and how can we bring collaboration closer. But also recently had a JRC report on the role of AI in scientific research, and of course the journey continues. All of those aspects have culminated into our European AI in science strategy. The goals of the strategy are threefold. It's integrating AI in science to reinforce European competitiveness, ultimately by accelerating scientific discovery. It's supporting and accelerating the responsible adoption of AI by scientists in all disciplines. And the in all disciplines is very important. So the strategy is actually discipline agnostic. We really want to promote and support the use of AI in any domain science, so in any scientific discipline that is able to use it. Some of the disciplines are much more advanced in this as others, often has to do with the history of the discipline, but we really want to support across the board. And thirdly, we want to ensure European scientific leadership and strategic autonomy by making sure that we have AI tools for use in our scientific community. We're able to use them and we are able to develop them as well. How do we want to do that? We want to have this distinctly European approach to AI in science, should be based on fair, transparent, and trustworthy research and results. We want to foster, retain, and attract AI scientific talent in Europe. We want to fund excellence in AI in science, and we want to pool AI resources, and this is also an enormously central and important aspect of RAISE. We want to pool resources by collaborating and coordinating with member states, collaborating with private sector where possible, and cooperating internationally as well. So we are really looking to connect the dots and bring different players together. And that culminates in this picture of the strategy. You see RAISE very prominently there at the top, and that's because RAISE brings together a number of elements that are also the different parts of our strategy. And then at the bottom, you have three more aspects that are not directly linked to RAISE, but that are also part of our efforts to support the ecosystem. So first to mention, the four important aspects that we see for AI in science can be analyzed into computational power on the one hand, data on the other, scientific data for use with AI in the scientific disciplines, research funding for supporting these efforts, of course, and excellence and talent, finding the talent, making sure that the right people are connected to the right people to make sure that there are synergies and that exciting scientific results can be achieved. As per collaboration and coordination, we also have chapters in the strategy on startup scale-ups and private sector. That includes private sector involvement and how can we incentivize the private sector to come on board. But it also has an aspect of making sure that startups and scale-ups can actually use scientific results that are obtained through with use of AI. Member states coordination is quite obvious. There we really want to make sure that we align with the member states and ideally would set up common initiatives and international collaboration as well. The international collaboration specifically, and it goes for almost everything in the strategy, it also takes place under the umbrella of the General Commission's approach to AI. So this is part of the general international cooperation on AI and on research, and it's where those two meet that we want to step up the efforts. So with that, I can introduce RAISE. You already saw it on the previous slide. RAISE is the resource for AI science in Europe. The idea is that RAISE will serve as a catalyst for collective efforts with member states, with private sector, pooling resources, mobilizing investments, and attracting top talent from across Europe and beyond. Importantly, RAISE, and the name says it, RAISE, it's the resource for AI science in Europe. It's not the resource for AI in science in Europe, although that is a very important aspect of it. But as you can see here, it is about AI in science on the one hand, the use and application of AI technologies in domain sciences, use of AI in physics, in healthcare, etc. But it's also the science for AI. So the scientific development of AI technologies, the computer scientific part, let's say, that is part of RAISE. And we believe that by integrating both of them and by networking both of them, making sure that there's a strong interaction between those developing the AI technologies and those wanting to solve scientific problems with AI, we could have strong synergies that lead to new AI technologies on the one hand and scientific breakthroughs on the other. So RAISE is set to be a virtual European institute that pools, aligns, and coordinates essential AI resources. Those essential AI resources, as I mentioned, computational power, data, research funding, and excellence and talent. It's supposed to promote cutting-edge research in AI, and it will, and the uptake of AI for scientific progress across disciplines. So that's the AI in science aspect. What does it offer? It would offer a dynamic research community to foster interdisciplinary collaborations between the best scientists in Europe. AI resources it would offer long-term funding, it would offer EU's computational power and data sets at scale. It would work through interconnecting and establishing collaboration for AI in science and science for AI with member states and private sector. And then an important part of it as well, and I will tell you a little bit more about that later, would be that we'll be setting up a high-level academic advisory board that provides scientific guidance for RAISE. There will be a secretariat that we are also in the process of setting up that will ensure the symbiosis and this very important linking and networking of the different elements of RAISE, both science for AI and AI in science, but for AI in science also across the different scientific domains that will be connected to RAISE and that will be using AI. This slide summarizes what RAISE brings for the European scientists. So we really want RAISE to have a tangible impact on the lives of European scientists. And of course, this corresponds to the 4 different resources that RAISE wants to pool and wants to offer. So we want to make sure that scientists find that they have access to excellence. So that means that we want to cultivate talent in the scientists themselves. We want to cultivate AI in science and science for AI talent. But we also want to make sure that researchers wanting to explore use of AI in their discipline are able to find the right colleagues across Europe to work with to make sure that they can actually achieve results and that they don't find themselves willing to do something but are impossible or can't advance because they can't find the right colleagues or the right excellent talent to cooperate with. We also want to offer increased computational capacity. This is already happening as part of the AI factories. So the AI factories, part of the Euro HPC consortium, are being set up. But we want to move one step further with the AI gigafactories that are also under negotiation. And we want to make sure that scientists have dedicated access to those AI gigafactories. And we will ensure that by contributing to the gigafactories from Horizon Europe, making sure that researchers also get their part. We want to facilitate access to data. So scientists should be able to find the data they need, tap into it, develop their data, and offer their data also for sharing. With the ability and necessary funding as well to gather new data, because this is an important bottleneck for AI in science in many different disciplines, with the support from RAISE. And of course, we want to offer dedicated funding for excellent science and offer support for scientists who want to develop a career using AI in their specific scientific discipline. This is the action plan that we have in the strategy. It covers some of the aspects that are linked to RAISE, but it also covers some excellent ones. You again see the 4 building blocks here that are connected to RAISE. I will go into some of the ones that are mentioned there a little bit more in detail, because they're part also of our funding through Horizon Europe in one of the next slides, notably the doctoral networks and the thematic networks of excellence as part of the excellence in talents pillar. But we also want to, under that umbrella, continue working on the guidelines, as I had mentioned before. We will be setting up with the Joint Research Center, which is also part of the European Commission, an AI evaluation hub, which could evaluate models that are proposed for evaluation. On the compute part, as I mentioned, the AI gigafactories, importantly, and we will contribute from Horizon Europe up to 600 million to the establishment of these gigafactories, which would allow producing and training the very largest models and in very competitive models on European soil, which is a capacity that we are missing at the moment. And we will also offer AI computing resources for science through the existing AI gigafactories and the ones that are still being set up as we speak. Then on data, we will be collaborating also with our colleagues in DG Connect. So again, under the entire AI and data umbrella, on data labs dedicated to science. We will link with EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud, which is already a home for scientific data focused on open data. And we want to make sure that we can also offer AI-ready data through the Science Cloud. We want to identify strategic data gaps and gather, curate, and integrate data sets to remedy those gaps. We want to collect evidence to improve access and to reuse publicly funded research results. So data that is already generated, we want to make sure that it's really validated, that it remains accessible and can be used for further research rather than dying somewhere on a local server. And then fourthly, the research funding. We want to incentivize and coordinate investments in AI in science. So with member states, with private sector as well, and of course also from the European level. We will seek to double Horizon Europe investment figures in AI in general, and AI in science is part of that. So we also want to double funding of AI in science. And that is, of course, with a view to the next MFF starting 2028 in the next Research and Innovation Framework Program. We will be funding we are actually on the verge of funding scientific foundation model development, and I'll get back to that a little bit later as well. And we will also be investing in laboratory automation. Why? Because this is very important. If you would have AI-assisted generation of hypotheses, then the next bottleneck is actually testing those hypotheses. And with laboratory automation that is driven by AI, you can actually do real-world testing of such hypotheses in a much more efficient and faster way. These are the 3 remaining blocks, which were the ones that were at the bottom under RAISE, and they are at the bottom not because they're less important, but because they are cross-cutting. They apply to RAISE, but also to wider initiatives. So working with the private sector includes having those AI and science summits. We just had the first one in Copenhagen, beginning of Copenhagen. There was a lot of private sector interest there as well. There was a lot of interest in the event in general, and we really managed to bring the community together there. And during that AI and science summit, we also officially launched by our Commissioner Zarieva and by EVP Virkonen the pilot of RACE. So pilot of RACE is already running. We will also have under the private sector umbrella a pledging campaign where we will be asking private sector and philanthropies to pledge contributions to AI in science, also looking to mobilize and align private sector investment in this area. And we want to analyze the implications of the AI Act for the scientific community. This is very important because the AI Act has a research exemption. So research is normally not concerned by the AI Act, but the devil is a little bit in the detail. Research that will be used for commercial purposes later on, that will be taken up in a commercial context, may actually be impacted. The AI office is setting up a help desk for the AI Act that would help people to identify, are they actually concerned or is what they are doing, is it under the AI Act or is it not? And for research, we would also do a specific study to analyze exactly what the implications would be in order to best inform researchers and make sure that it's not a bottleneck or a hurdle for them to adopt AI in their research. Secondly, member states, we want to coordinate with member states, associated countries such as Norway, and research and innovation stakeholders through an ERA action, the European Research Area, on AI in science. This is already going on. So we have many RNI stakeholders, member states, there around the table to see how can we better work together and how can we coordinate efforts. Monitor the uptake of AI in science with indicators and metrics. So we already have some of those, but we are establishing and developing a more detailed and more precise framework for really monitoring closely this uptake of AI in science. Thirdly, international collaboration, so address issues on AI in science with relevant third countries and regions. We will engage through the existing instruments, including regional policy dialogues on research and innovation. And we want to promote European values and standards through multilateral fora, again, also under the general AI approach of the European Commission. And on this slide, this is the one that I was referring to before. This gives you a bit of a timeline. So for RACE, of which the pilot has now been launched, we are in a pilot phase. And that pilot phase means that at present, all specifically dedicated funding for RACE comes from the European level. It comes through the Horizon Europe Framework Program, of course, because I emphasize that the important goal of RACE is to pool resources and bring member states as well as private sector together with the European level. This is not the end goal. So we are now starting up RACE. That will give us experience as well and make us discover what are the best ways, what are the best approaches for networking these different parts, etc. And they are a sort of embryonic version of what we wanted to see under the next MFF, under the new framework program, which would be a more stable instrument that can really on a stable basis bring together those resources and have a common or aligned agendas, research agendas for AI in science. And that has already started in Work Program 25, which is already running, to the extent that the first part there, the Facilitated Cooperation for AI in Science, which is an embryonic RACE Secretariat for the AI in Science part, the winner of that call has already been announced in Copenhagen, and we will be working with them to have them start as quickly as possible on putting in place the first elements of a RACE Secretariat, of investigating which disciplines are most concerned, what research agendas could be identified, etc. We also had a call on AI foundation models in science, focusing specifically on the domains of material science, climate change, pollution, and agriculture for 30 million. And that call is in the process of being evaluated and awarded. So that will also be starting very soon. That is traditional collaborative research, but specifically on AI in science, focusing on foundation models. What we have coming soon, it's today actually a very nice opportunity because the new work program 26-27 will be published today. So in that work program, you will see as part of the Cluster 4 work program, but also as part of a new and innovative horizontal actions work program, which may be important for those trying to look for the topics. We will have a number of initiatives that are all connected to RAISE. So we'll have firstly thematic networks of excellence for material science and agriculture and environmental science. That will establish 2 thematic networks of excellence, so 2 networks that offer excellent science in using AI in a specific discipline. And those were chosen with a target in mind because they are very promising disciplines. But the aim would be in the future for RAISE to harbor several of those thematic networks of excellence, focusing on specific scientific domains that apply AI and that are excellent in doing so. And by doing so, doing joint research, but also being a beacon and a reference for that type of research in that type of discipline in Europe. Connected to that is the pilot for the Science for AI pillar of RAISE. So this is the other part of RAISE, where there will also be a network of excellence of sorts, which will bring together the excellent computer scientific AI labs in Europe, so focusing on science for AI. They will be connected to RAISE in the same way as the thematic networks of excellence will be. And then it will be the aim of the Secretariat and these networks in their own right to really collaborate with and to link up with the other ones, making sure that we get the knowledge from the science for AI, that we get it to the domain scientists, but also that we have the domain scientists learn from each other. Material science people may be in their own silo. There may be agricultural scientists that are using AI in a specific way. The way in which they're using it may actually be interesting too, and may also be applicable for the material scientists. And that's the kind of collaboration and interaction that we want to make sure happens with RAISE. We will also be launching RAISE doctoral networks, and those are to support PhD talent, emerging PhD talent in AI in science. So there we really want to also support the base of young researchers to go into AI in science, to develop their skills in their domains and prepare the future of scientific research. And then the last call is the one I already mentioned on the laboratory automation, also for a considerable amount. That will also be focusing on a number of targeted areas where there is a lot of interest and a lot of movement in having that laboratory automation. The other ongoing actions are also ones that I already mentioned. It's AI gigafactories and the contribution of RISE in Europe to them. It's our action with the member states, associated countries and stakeholders on AI in science. And then the third one is the Scientific Advisory Board. It's officially called the High-Level Academic Advisory Board for RAISE. For that, we will be setting up a call for expression of interest that is to be published in Q1, first quarter of 2026. That may actually be arriving quite soon. That call will be open, and it will be open to the best and the brightest working on AI science, so both sides of RAISE, to be part of this advisory board that will provide scientific guidance for RAISE. Our aim would be, depending on how the evaluation procedure goes, to have that installed by Q2 2026. And so all these elements are part of this pilot of RAISE. The elements are being set up, and they will also guide the further development of RAISE, let's say starting from 2028 under the new MFF, which is mentioned at the bottom there, to have a robust and durable anchoring of RAISE in the new framework program. As part of the FP10, so the Future Horizon Europe proposal, there is also mention of a moonshot on next generation AI. This is entirely tentative. This is still being discussed. But in case that there would be moonshots as part of the new framework program, again, completely tentative, we would also have a strong push to have one on next generation AI and on frontier models there. And with that, I think I conclude the presentation.
Very interesting, Lars. Thank you very much. Absolutely engaging. I noticed that we already have a couple of attendees that are reserving the possibility to intervene. But of course, I'm going to exploit my privilege to be the moderator to make the first questions to you. I read, of course, a bit the documents in advance, and there are some elements that attracted me quite clearly. you mentioned the 600 million euros for the gigafactories. If I understood correctly, basically this is a direct support to the gigafactory, and in change, the scientists are going to have privileged access. So this is not going to be a competitive call, correct? But will be a way. But when the computing power will be available, will there be a mechanism to reserve it, or is the Commission planning to do something like this, or?
Yes, we are planning to work very closely together with EuroHPC to make sure that there could be privileged access. And privileged access has many components. It's sufficient access in terms of sufficient computing capacity, but can also be have a time aspect to it, that researchers are able to use the system for sufficiently long time. And we'll also have support to actually use the systems. It's also not straightforward. You can't just go from your PC and move to the gigafactory. So all these elements are being discussed as we speak. The gigafactories are still being set up. There was a call for expression of interest, but the follow-up is being done at the moment with the Commission. So many of the elements there are still unknown, but it is clear that from the Horizon Europe contribution, we would be able to give privileged access to researchers and make sure that this capacity is not only reserved for commercial use, but that it's really for research and European-funded research in first instance.
Okay. Yeah. And another question, and then I invite the people that are listening to reserve the possibility to intervene by just writing the name in the Q&A box that you find under your screen, Q&A. Click on it, put your name, and I will give you the possibility to intervene directly. My final question before giving the floor to our attendees is related to the doctoral networks. You mentioned that is a call that is going to be issued in the work program 26-27. Is this a call which is appearing in Horizon and not in Erasmus? Do I understood correctly?
Yes, it's appearing in the Horizontal Actions work program.
Okay.
It is funded from cluster Pillar 2, so it's part of that constellation. In practice, it will be implemented through using the MSCA mechanism. So there exist MSCA doctoral networks. So we have a collaboration with MSCA, which is Pillar 1, to actually implement it. But the call originates from Pillar 2, from this Horizontal Actions work program, where it is internally funded through Cluster 4, indeed.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I start then giving the floor to the attendees. The first one that reserved the right to intervene is Gianpietro Gianrocco, which I suspect is from my country. Gianpietro, we are just giving you the possibility to open your microphone and camera and to interact with Lars. Just accept our request to be upgraded as a panelist, and in 1 second you should basically appear on our screen.
You can hear me?
Yes, perfectly. We don't see you at the moment, but if you can introduce yourself.
Good morning. I am Gianrocco Gianpietro. I am an Italian engineer, and I make a question about can my contribute to you in this initiative, in this European initiative?
As an expert in this case, if I understand correctly, correct?
Yes, in the past I participated to like an expert in transport safety.
Okay, so how an expert can contribute to RACE?
There would be a number of possibilities, I think, where there's anchorage, depending, of course, on background and credentials. One could apply for the high-level academic advisory board, as I mentioned, for which we will open the call. Of course, there's also a possibility to be part of proposals for networks of excellence of some of our other proposals. And again, because we're now in the pilot phase of RACE, all of these are Horizon Europe calls. In the future, of course, when we will have more contributors around the table, hopefully member states, hopefully private sector, as part of a more permanent instrument. We would want to develop a common and a strategic research and innovation agenda that may also cover different aspects where people like Gianpietro would also be able to participate and collaborate. But this enters into the general European research and innovation framework, where researchers can participate by submitting proposals, essentially.
Yeah. Just a question to you from me, Gianpietro or Gianrocco. What is the name and what is the surname?
The name is Gianrocco.
Gianrocco, okay.
Because I had a grandfather that called his name was Rocco, and the other was Giovanni, and so my father has joined besides.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gianrocco.
Thank you
for intervening. Thanks a lot. The next one to intervene is Alessandro Giassi, and he has a question that I also wanted to ask you. So as I read it, I leave up to him to challenge you on this, because I think this is one of the elements of great interest that I noticed also. So,
if you can hear me?
Yes, perfectly. If you can
Okay,
open your camera, introduce yourself also.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Alessandro Giassi. I'm a lead data scientist. I work on AI application since 2001, so it's a long story. My question was about the network of excellence. If you can tell us more, if it is a network of excellence of companies or people, if it is a individual level or a company level.
Okay, it's not at the individual level. So at the moment, again, under this race pilot phase, it will be a call under Horizon Europe to establish the first of those networks. So participants in such calls are consortia of research institutes, and they could also potentially be companies. But the focus, of course, is very much on research with AI, and then mostly also more fundamental research, lower TRL research. With AI in scientific domains or on AI itself. That being said, and I think it was also brought out a bit in my presentation, we also have an aim to make sure that research results with AI can be taken up more easily with possibly commercial interests, or in any case with an application also for societal benefit. And it is there also that we encourage links with the private sector of these consortia. So either because there are actual researchers or there are actually companies doing research on board in the consortia, or because some of the research institutes have links to commercial companies that they work with in order to valorize the research that they do. So it's a bit in that aspect that one would look. They are not networks for individuals. The doctoral networks will support through a doctoral network, so also through a consortium of organizations, PhD students in AI and science. So there it's a bit more individually tailored directly for the individual talent. But as part of the networks of excellence, this will be research organizations doing research of various kinds that will enter there, and that will then compete.
Okay, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. And you expect many consortia to appear, or you expect a sort of, how can I say, effect of organization of the relevant stakeholders? Because, for example, when you speak about advanced materials, the first thing that comes to the mind of a person is IMI for Europe, no? The strategic partnerships. That is also, by the way, managed by the DGRTD or somehow baked by DGRTD. Do you expect this to be the playfield where probably the most credible proposals are going to come out, or?
That could be. That is left open. We really want to award excellence first and foremost. I mean, as is always the case, the consortia can be established in many different ways. We want to honor the most excellent consortium. And of course, for some disciplines, indeed, for example, material science, there are other examples as well, molecular biology, for example. These are quite established networks because the prominence of AI is already very present there. And those are the ones that we want to support them because they are very promising, but we also want to make sure, and maybe that will come at a later stage because of budget limitations at present, but we want to make sure that also in the other disciplines, just thinking social sciences and humanities, in less likely candidates, that we will also encourage the uptake of AI.
How many network of excellence you're expecting to support?
At the moment, under the Only Horizon Europe funding, we will be supporting 2 on AI in science and 1 on science for AI.
Okay.
But we already have a number of running networks as well that may be connected to RAISE in the course of this coming 2 years. That is also something that we need to set up with our secretariat. So there are ideas of bringing also some more specific knowledge, let's say on greener AI, also on board of RAISE for the benefit of all. On the side of the AI in science, we have budget limitations. Of course, I also want to put a little bit of or make that a bit more relative in the sense that the framework program has always been funding AI in science in more general calls. So our estimate in the new work program 26-27 is that we're funding around 750 million of projects that are using AI in the project proposals. So in the actual research that they will be doing, not to write the proposal. An important distinction. No. It's those that in their proposal clearly indicate that they will be using AI to further the scientific research. That is 750 million on top of all of the investments that we're doing for RAISE and on top of the 600 million that will go to the gigafactories. And that is actually not new. So already in the previous work programs, this has gone on as well. So there is already quite some investment at European level and obviously also at member state level. The exercise now is try to bring that together, to harmonize that and to align that, to fight fragmentation. That we're not funding the same things or actually contradictory things at different levels, but that we really bring it together. So in this pilot phase, the number of disciplines is relatively limited. We will be looking also in the coming 2 years to increase the number of networks of excellence. For example, to tell you one on life sciences or healthcare or some similar area would also be highly relevant because there the AI use is also very, very clear and extremely promising. So we would also really need to cover that ground. At the moment, for budgeting reasons, this is not the case, but we will be looking into different ways to try to establish that. And then definitely in the new MFF, we really want to expand this range and make sure that we cover a wide range of domain scientific disciplines where we really encourage the use of AI and the interchange between them. Yeah.
Very interesting. The world is definitely changing. I think we have probably someone from Turkey, Özkan Benguzu, if I correctly pronounced it, or maybe it's not Turkey. Let us know who you are, Özkan, if I understand, or Benguzu.
Hello, yes, this is Bengusu. Thank you very much. And true, I'm Turkish, but I actually work for a Brussels-based think tank called Center for Future Generations. And thank you very much. So this was very informative. I'll ask my question very briefly, and then I'll support it by 2 examples, and I'll try to be brief. So my question is, while the initiative is quite broad and trying to do a 360-degree here, it also seems quite kind of fragmented. And I'm curious to what degree the Secretariat or a central body will actually be able to oversee the strategic direction and endorse the right initiatives to come to you, especially if it's mostly a collective effort for appliance, or how can you ensure that the right ambition can actually apply to this program or be motivated? And I'll give 2 examples. Again, this is not a comparison, but the US recently launched the Genesis mission, right? And it's a full program executed by a central body with clear milestones. Again, I'm not comparing it in terms of the magnitude or a nation state versus multiple countries doing something. Another example from the industry, it's the model Cosmos. People on this call might know it, but it's a new and very popular model that comes up with scientific discoveries. Again, I'm not endorsing whether people should use it or not, but it is tens of millions of dollars to come up with such an ambitious project. And it is not one of the funding buckets here, for example. How does this program aim to empower that ambitious and maybe AI infrastructure type of projects? Is this in the scope? And do you think the Secretariat will be able to steer the applicants' motivation towards that direction?
Very clear and very challenging question for you, Lars.
Thank you very much,
From Bengusu, correct?
Yes, Bengusu.
Correct, yes.
Sorry for misleading your name, it's
No worries.
always challenging.
Many thanks for the very excellent question. Firstly, yes, it's a broader initiative. Yes, we want to span different scientific domains. Yes, we're a bit technology agnostic. I mean, it's AI, but we don't specify which technology to use. That's on purpose. So we want to set up something for the longer term that has a vision and that has mostly this pooling effect for Europe to fight fragmentation. In practice, the future and more stable version of RACE, which is not just funded from the European side, but from all sorts of contributors. In practice, all of these contributors will want to have their say as to what kind of research would be done. The advantage is that we bring everybody together and everybody can jointly discuss and decide what direction it should be taking. To ensure that that is in line with scientific priorities and that there's a very thorough scientific understanding of both the technologies and the domain sciences as to which are the big challenges that are prone to be solved with AI, etc., we will have this high-level academic advisory board that is independent and that will say, okay, we think that these and these and these are the most pressing problems. We think that these and these and these are actually challenges. And those are to be taken on board by whoever's funding to make sure that we fund in a common direction guided by science. That's the setup that we have. To bring that to your comparison to the Genesis initiative, for example, there's been a lot of talk about that for the past week and a half. You say it's a full program with clear milestones. Yes, absolutely. It has very clear milestones. They're also very, very short term. To give you my personal insights on that, this Genesis initiative is actually not new at all. It builds on things that they were already doing in the US, that they also already had federal plans for the FAST program. Notably, it's built on that. The US ecosystem is very different. So they have the national laboratories, which are now the essential part of this Genesis initiative. And at the core of the Genesis initiative is the idea that these national laboratories should offer their data, which is normally quite heavily guarded. That has been developed also with public investment, but they would open that up to the private sector, notably American big tech. So there is also a sort of political move behind there, one that we're not directly looking to copy. But when you look at it, the American approach, I would say in general, on AI, is much more, indeed, you could say targeted. You could also say it's very much restricted. So this comes from also the private sector interest in AI that they have in the US. And this is very much focused on very large models, large language models like you have in GPT, etc., Gemini from Google, etc. And they have a similar approach to science. So it's mostly about foundation models, which are very big models trained on a lot of diverse scientific data. And they believe that this holds great promise. This is still to be explored. So people are building foundation models, but exactly what they will be able to do and what you can get out of it in a scientific context remains a bit to be seen. I would say a bit similarly to what you can actually do with large language model. This has its limitations, has its drawbacks. It's not always reliable, etc., as anybody who has ever used ChatGPT will know. So what we want to do in Europe is not necessarily try to just catch up with that American approach, which is very much focused on big data, big computing infrastructure, and we know all of the investment related to that they're doing in the US. We don't want to catch up with them. We also cannot do that from a budgetary perspective. But what we really want to make sure is that we keep an eye on the longer term and that we will not be just boxed in by this American very large model approach, but that we also explore other ways of doing AI that are, for example, also much greener, don't require as much computational power, that use more precise, smaller data sets rather than gigantic but not so precise data sets. So the approach is very different. I would dare to say that the call that we are doing in Work Program 25 on foundation models, which will very soon also start going, is a bit similar to the Genesis initiative in a European context. So it doesn't have the national laboratories behind it, doesn't have these data sets. We're also not entirely sure exactly which data is present there, because this is normally very highly guarded. In Europe, we've always had this much more open approach to science. We want science to be as open as possible, but as closed as necessary, to make sure that there's a lot of sharing. And so our ecosystem is a bit incomparable. And I would say that our initiative was even launched before Genesis initiative was, but it's just much broader in scope, and it's much more about setting up a framework that will allow us to be competitive in the future and develop our own approach rather than just catching up with the Americans. And then on the model that you mentioned, this Cosmos model, I'm not particularly familiar with it, but I think some of my previous reflections also reflect on that. I mean, these are approaches that are very resource intensive, so enormously energy intensive, enormously budget intensive. So they do create high barriers for anybody who wants to compete with them. But the exact usability of these models and exactly what they will yield in the future as per scientific discovery, as per actual usable scientific support, still remains to be seen. And then even if you would have these models, and if you would have these models generating very nice hypotheses that you could explore, the exploring of these hypotheses is then the next bottleneck by scientists. So scientists are actually in search for much more data, doing much more scientific research to make sure that they have the data needed to train such models so that it can actually do correct predictions. And at the moment, the predictions made by these models often may seem plausible at first sight, but really require significant scientific verification. So also there, the promise of by tomorrow we will have an AI that is just able to replace scientists, we think is pretty far off the mark. And we're preparing for a different kind of future with race than the Americans are doing in a much more narrowly focused way. I hope that can answer your question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this was and thank you for point-to-point answer. I don't want to hold off another person's question, but if we have the time, if you can speak a bit about the AI in science of AI bit, I'd appreciate it, but I'll pass it to the next question. Thank you.
Yeah, we still have 3 minutes, but if you want in 1 minute to say something more about...
Yes, so it's about the science for AI pillar. There, the idea is, and this actually builds on a much longer tradition that we also have in the Commission. It's really working with the excellent research centers that we have in Europe on AI technology itself, to be able to network those, to make sure that ideas are passed on and that we can actually be developing frontier models, the next generation AI, with a particular focus on these things that we believe should be European AI. And that includes also greener AI, more resource efficient AI that is much less wasteful than the American approach, I would say, but also much more trustworthy, much more explainable, etc. And there are enormous research efforts still to be done on that. And we want to make sure that we're supporting those because we think we can make better AI in Europe if we continue on that path.
Yeah. Thank you, Benguso, for your intervention. You challenged a lot. Lars has been the longest answer of this session. I would like to accept the final question before closing. Laurent Bonneau. Laurent, we are opening the microphone to you. It disappeared. Probably. Yeah, he's there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Laurent, you should have received our request to intervene. No, he's probably not anymore connected. Oh, no, there he is. Laurent, you're with us. Please unmute your microphone and ask your question. We try to keep it in 1 minute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I just have no video, sorry. Can you hear me correctly?
Yep. Correctly, yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for taking my question, which is related to humanities or social and human sciences in AI research. The question is, how do you take, or which European framework program takes into account methods and tools of humanities, say history, sociology, anthropology, for instance, about the acceptability of AI in civil society?
Thank you, Laurent.
Thank you. Such efforts are already being funded under Horizon Europe. This is notably in cluster 2. And so we already have projects running of that type, assessing the impact of AI on various societal aspects. If you're talking more about the application of AI technologies for historical research, sociological research, anthropological research, this is also something that we would be very eager to also specifically fund through RAISE. But as discussed before, at the moment, we don't have the budget in this pilot phase, but this is definitely something that we would also want to connect to RAISE. In social sciences and humanities in general, as scientific disciplines, also really require a place in RAISE. For example, in social sciences, there are quite a number of illustrations of research being done there using AI to analyze big data, etc. So it's a very promising aspect as well. We will be doing it in the future, and there is already some research of that type being funded through Horizon Europe.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
I am very sorry not to be capable to take the question from Luis Brendel. I apologize for this. Our hour is finished. I would like to thank a lot Lars De Nul for being with us today. Thank you very much. It has been a very interesting session. I would like to close this 1 hour with Europe, wishing you all the best for your Christmas and for your New Year Eve, and anticipating that we are working for a new appointment in the last week of January. And you're going to, of course, to receive the related invitation. So be ready to click on register to be with us next time. We are going to talk maybe about a very interesting topic that will be very on top of the priorities, but I not anticipate anything before having secured the speaker. See you next year with 1 Hour with Europe, organized by the NTNU Brussels office. Have a nice day and a nice weekend as well.